Ukraine notches key battlefield victory in war of attrition with Russia. The Hill. Ukrainian troops fighting through a stalemate notched a victory this week by securing a foothold on the eastern bank of the Dnipro River, pushing Russian troops back from another front as Moscow struggles to make ground in its own offensive pushes across eastern Ukraine. Though Ukraine's counteroffensive launched in June sparked hopes in the west of a breakthrough, the war has. Below are your comments. The Ukrainians did establish a small bridgehead on the left bank marshes about a month ago. It was done at significant cost, especially considering that the terrain does not offer potential foe or any significant advancement. It did pin down a disproportionate number of Russian troops. This entire Ukraine-Russian war has exposed the Republican Party as a non-committed entity with no unified plan for national security. This divided GOP has led to a deep divide in the party over the Ukraine war. I can easily remember the GOP's unified stance against Russia when they were a legitimate. The facts are that Ukraine is advancing and Russia is retreating, slowly perhaps. If Ukraine can keep that foothold across the Dnipro and expand it, maybe enough to get armor across. The Russian defenses in front of them should be thinner. Ukraine will have the best winter equipment that NATO can. Did they win another little village, which will in no way impact the war for their benefit, did they? They put a few Marines across the river in rubber boats and captured a small village that was left undefended. Next news. Seoul warns North Korea not to launch spy satellite and hints 2018 military deal could be suspended. Associated Press. South Korea's military warned North Korea not to go ahead with its planned spy satellite launch, suggesting Monday that Seoul could suspend an inter-Korean agreement to reduce tensions and resume frontline aerial surveillance in response. Our military will come up with necessary measures to protect the lives and safety of the people, if North Korea pushes ahead with a military spy satellite launch despite our warning, a senior South Korean military officer, Kong Hapul, said in a televised street. Below are your comments. Russia will do absolutely anything to continue proxy wars with the US. So if you don't agree with USA system of power, you can't have advanced weapons. So when you go to war and defend yourself, USA can overpower you? Like the Middle East now? NK and Russia have the rights to do whatever they want to defend themselves, like the USA lies to do what they want. If South Korea were not run by a right-wing nationalist party and allied to an enemy foreign power, the DPRK would not need to surveil its only hostile neighbor. It is up to Seoul to strike out in a friendly manner to lessen the intra-Korean tensions. The Seoul government needs to read the coffee. So much for talks and act now. While Seoul Corps and its Western allies continuously wastes its time in pointless talks and empty threats, the no-Corps regime is slowly but surely strengthens its military and nuclear capability, so much so that eventually Seoul Corps may just wake up one day Next news. Russian propaganda spreads lies about Ukrainian pilot switching over to Russia. Ukrainska Pravda. Russian propaganda is spreading disinformation about a pilot serving in the armed forces of Ukraine flying over into Russia. Ukraine's defense intelligence has refuted this information. Source: TASS, a pro-Kremlin Russian news outlet. Andriy Yusov, spokesman for Ukraine's defense intelligence, in a commentary for Ukrainska Pravda. And Ukrainska Pravda sources details. TASS, a pro-Kremlin Russian news outlet, claimed on Saturday that an active Ukrainian armed forces pilot had flown to the Russian. Below are your comments. People aren't exactly mobbing up at the borders to get into Russia. Must have something to do with Putin's vision of the great life for he and his cronies and a few SBL eeps for everyone else. There is no upside to switching over to the Russian side. The West is a free society where we strive for justice. Russia is a prison where everyone is watched and where thugs run everything. No one in their right mind would voluntarily switch over to the Russian side. There's no reason for anyone to move to Russia. Even if you get bribed, you have no guarantee that Putin won't jail you, or send you to the front lines. People are just tools to be used by Putin. Few months ago, Ukraine said the very same about some Russian pilots, tank crews and infantry. What goes around comes around. Russian propaganda or Ukrainian propaganda? Next news. Scholz still wants to talk to Putin. Ukrainska Pravda. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has confirmed on Saturday, the 18th of November, that he is considering talking to Russian President Vladimir Putin when such an opportunity arises. Source: DPA news agency with reference to Scholz, during a meeting with voters in Neuthal, near Potsdam, as reported by European Pravda details. Answering the question about the possibility of talks with Putin, the German Chancellor said, "I will talk to him," without specifying when it might happen. Below are your comments. It doesn't hurt to keep the lines of communication open. Even Putin will eventually see that he needs a way out of the mess he put himself into. Denmark will start stopping Russian ghost tankers as they sail through the Baltic, and of course they will be carrying oil without insurance, and they will. What would a diplomatic solution to Russia attacking Ukraine look like? Is the Israeli model of Gaza helpful in figuring it out? Good job. Olaf wants to talk to Putin. You know why he wants free Russian gas. Euro is printed out thin air and it is exchanged for Russian gas. So thereby German economy needs Putin, not old Biden. The only thing Biden can give and deliver is Hunter Biden. I'm sure the German taxpayers are sick and tired of paying for our proxy war against Russia too. Only a matter of time before all nations involved come to their senses. 300,000 dead Russians and counting. Next news. GOP representative calls for Biden administration to be resolute with China. The Hill. Mike Lawler, RN. Y, said the Biden administration has to be resolute with China. China is our greatest geopolitical foe in the world, Lawler said on The Sean Spicer Show, Thursday. Why after President Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping had a high-stakes meeting Wednesday. And they have entered into an unholy alliance with Iran and Russia. Below are your comments. I seem to remember when Trump said tariffs are easy to win. Farmers lost a $40 billion deal-a-year deal because China simply went to South America to buy crops. We are subsidizing our farmers still today to the tune of billions. That is the ones that did not go bankrupt or have their farms bow. Here is what gets me: the China tariffs has cost the U.S. billions a year, and the Republicans still don't understand we need China just as much as they need U.S. Lawyer sounded like the U.S. can manipulate China. He doesn't understand diplomacy has better results than anything else we can China. Anything to say to U.S. Senator holding up military promotions? As a European, I can only speculate on Mr. Lawler's motivation. I know, of course, that Anglo-American politicians emit a lot of hot opinions and rarely views that contain common sense. I say that because many of us Europeans are frustrated with the USA's intolerant, self-righteous, arrogant attitude. Next news. Ukrainian drone production capacity may exceed Russia's, says Air Force spokes. The new voice of Ukraine. Ukraine's drone production capacity could exceed Russia's thanks to the support of its western partners. Ukrainian Air Force spokesman Yuri Inat said on national television on November 19. Below are your comments. The reason most of us don't believe Ukraine is winning the war is because we noticed the same experts claiming Russia is a paper tiger today got rich for a long time convincing us that the opposite was true. We notice the experts say whatever makes them money. Not the truth. Drones the new weapons of war? The West needs to catch up with more drone production for use with satellites? Run the Russians out of Ukraine with drones that use GPS targets? We have a boutique defense industry making 15,000 artillery rounds a month and undergoing modernization so that in a few years they can make 80,000 a month. Before the war, Russia was making 250,000 rounds a month. Hard to tell, as our CIA is involved in staging car bombings and arming ISIS-ins. Don't the Russian people realize that Putin is a billionaire while the Russian army struggling to fight a war, where is the Russian people's money gone? Alexei Navalny has proven this and is now in jail put there by Putin on trumped-up fake charges. They really wrote this stuff thinking we will believe it. Next news. Waves of Russian drones attack Kyiv for second night in a row. BBC. The latest raids have revived fears Moscow is targeting Ukraine's energy infrastructure as winter begins. Below are your comments. If Europe truly wants to stop Russia, then they need to help with the fighting too. Russia can conscript millions of fighting-aged men over the next 10 years. Ukraine simply does not have the population to win this war of attrition, unless the EU supply them with long-range, powerful missiles and Success stories from the Ukrainian front have been rare for at least 1 year by now. Even the magnification of perceived Ukrainian mini-victories of retaking abandoned hamlets don't impress that much anymore. Meanwhile, the Western MSM mouthpieces can no longer keep the lid on the bad news from Ukrainian fighter pilot Voyvoda betook himself and his MiG eastward to Russia and was welcomed as a friend and a hero. 800 feet 000 conscript evaders have left Ukraine by crook or by hook and totally against their madman Autocrats hopes to Western Europe, and none of the EU or EFTA states is going to Now the Ukrainian citizens know what it was like when their government attacked the East Ukraine for 8 years and bleeped 14,000 people until the Russians came along. You reap what you have sowed since 2014 in eastern Ukraine. It's no fun when the rabbit has the gun. Next news. 40 workers have been trapped inside a collapsed tunnel in India for over a week and 3 attempts to doctor ill through the debris have failed so far. Insider. Rescuers have been working for over a week to extricate the workers, who are trapped inside a collapsed tunnel in northern India. Below are your comments. During law school I clerked at a federal agency that dealt with mining cave-ins and disasters. Mining isn't anywhere near as dangerous in the USA as it used to be, but it's still a plenty dangerous job, especially mines that are underground. In foreign countries, where the safety standards are not this country, citizens do abuse animals. Every video you see about monkeys, animals getting abused for social media purposes to make money. They will put monkey against the snake, snakes against the cat, intentionally putting them together then recording the horrible staged animal cruelty. Unfortunate. Let's all hope together they get out okay. Sounds tricky. What an awful indigestible diet. How are the chickpeas prepared? Can't they do better than that? Uppercasters, Brahmins, Hindus gave sacrifices before building Hindu temples to Kali, snake, naked owls with stones. This tunnel must be having low-caste Hindus for sacrifice. So pretending to rescue only. Jesus, may you and your angels be with the miners and help them be freed. Next news. Zelensky comments on deported young man's return. There were many attempts to help him. Ukrainska Pravda. President Volodymyr Zelensky has thanked everyone involved in bringing home Bohdan Yermokin, who was deported from the occupied city of Mariupol by the Russians. Bohdan turned 18 on the 19th of November. Source: The President's Evening Address. Quote, "Separately, I would like to thank everyone whose concern and efficiency help us return children who were abducted from the occupied territory to Ukraine." Below are your comments. Mariupol is Russia now. Plus I hardly think a fellow this age was stolen. I pity him as Kiev will immediately throw him into the front lines where his life expectancy is about 2 days. He was better off in Russia. I call a fake story. No one in control of their faculties would prefer Ukraine over. Thank God he is back with his people. Now what about the rest of the stolen children? See how long this boy survives in Ukraine, before being drafted and thrown onto the front line. His given name, Bogdan, is Ukrainian, and his family name, Ermokin, is Russian. Isn't that ironic? That city was named after Christ's mother. And Vlad destroyed it and mercilessly slaughtered a bunch of the people there. Next news. Kremlin sets up blogger school in occupied territories due to shortage of propagandists. Ukrainska Pravda. The Russians have opened a Kremlin-funded blogger school in the occupied territories of Ukraine to overcome a shortage of propagandists. Source: National Resistance Center. Quote, the Russians are trying to overcome the shortage of journalists in the temporarily occupied territories. Below are your comments. Blogger school where young minds are taught the finer arts of lying. Based on the typical Kremlin propaganda post on this site, the bar for entry into Kremlin propaganda school must be very low. I assume a lobotomy is required for all those accepted? These are the facts Yahoo and MSM are hiding from you, all easily verifiable and accurate. If you don't know these facts, what else are they hiding? That would explain why all the Russian trolls are so painfully obvious lately. They're all noobs. Like I said, the bots will try to cover up these facts. Just watch the replies, watch them work. They will say drink more vodka, call you comrade, Ivan or a Russian bot, but they will know and cannot argue any of these actual facts. Just try to lead you off. Next news. South Korea warns Kim Jong-un to halt imminent satellite launch. Bloomberg. North Korea could try to put a satellite into orbit within the next week or so, a South Korean official said, as Seoul warned Pyongyang to halt a rocket launch it sees violating UN Security Council resolutions. Most read from Bloomberg. OpenAI lead as efforts to bring back Altman reach impasse over board role. The doomed mission behind Sam Altman's shock ouster from OpenAI. OpenAI board urged by Messiar Soft investors to restore Altman. Altman sought billions for chip venture before OpenAI. Below are your comments. There is no doubt in my that anything in N. Korea of any importance has already been multi-targeted. Freedom is and never will be free, as history has shown. The Korean War never ended. It will soon though. Sigh, humans and the infatuation with things that go boom. Sure, it will all end just fine. He is free to do anything, just as long as it is not warheads. Very old trick. He try to put some salt on their tails. It works with birds. He and good luck. If not working, few sanctions or better idea warnings. He works with Russia, Iran, Cuba, Syria and on and on. Next news. Orban rails against Ukraine, says Kyiv is light years away from EU membership. Kyiv Independent. At a November 18 meeting of the Fidesz party, Orban focused part of his speech on the EU, railing against the mock-I nations of Brussels bureaucrats, the invasion of migrants, gender propaganda, the illusions of war, and Ukraine's ill-prepared membership in the EU. Below are your comments. Got no problem with Orban's immigration policy, but on this he shows his true authoritarian colors. Why doesn't he leave NATO and the EU and form a new Warsaw Pact? I bet Russia would even let him call it the Budapest Pact to make him feel extra special. How can EU permit an authoritarian member country turn against its regulation? Hungary's action is like a slap on EU's face. Orban's aim is the disintegration of the European Union. And Hungary is light seconds away from being kicked out of the EU. Let it be. Suspend Hungary from NATO and the EU. Embargo it if need be till Orban remembers what part of the world his country is located in. Orban is looking for concessions for Hungary. He's all about himself. He doesn't care about Ukraine or Russia or what other EU members or allies think. Next news. First Lady Olena Zelenska warns, if Ukraine tires, Russian aggression will spread. The new voice of Ukraine. If Ukraine fails to resist Russian aggression, the war will not stop but spread throughout the world. Ukrainian First Lady Olena Zelenska told the Halifax Security Forum, according to a presidential OFFICE press release on November 18. Below are your comments. I'm skeptical of that narrative. Russia has no interest in further expanding, and even if they did, they don't have the military strength or the support of their citizens for more war. This narrative is a fear tactic to warrant more support from the West. Evidence from recent history says this claim is false. Ukraine has a long history of corruption and only a very short period as a flawed democracy. Russia has not expanded its territory. Has not expanded like the militarization of NATO at the direction of US. Russia did not invade Ukraine but raw. She and her husband need to stop with these threatening tactics. It is a cheap trick nobody is buying. Russia is not going any further to Europe. Next year, after Republicans take over Senate and presidency, this will be over. Next news. Former Ukrainian athlete faces 12 years in prison for collaborating with Russians. The new voice of Ukraine. A former Ukrainian sumo wrestler who defected to Russia is under investigation for collaborating with the enemy country and faces up to 12 years in prison, according to Ukraine's SBU security service. On November 18. Below are your comments. Leave the guy alone. There are millions mixed and in between families and not much difference between Russians and Ukraine. Ian's anyway. I believe that if you do not like the country you live in, then you should move to the one you like. Stop complaining about a country while reaping the benefits. I feel the same way about Americans who complain about our country and then continue staying. If you are for Russian or Palestine, that's a girl. A sumo wrestler 400 pounds girl. Ukrainian stigma and discrimination toward female sumo wrestlers. That's another obstacle to Ukraine's integration into the EU. There are mixed loyalties during civil wars. What one side views as a traitor, the other side views as a patriot. This ridiculous war needs to stop. Both countries need a regime change. Next news. Ukrainians among crew on ship hijacked by Yemeni Houthis in Red Sea. Ukrainska Pravda. A group of Houthis, members of an Iran-backed Yemeni movement, have hijacked the Galaxy Leader, a CA/RGO ship with an international civilian crew, some of whom are Ukrainian citizens, in the Red Sea. Source: The Times of Israel. The Jerusalem Post details. The Israel Defense Forces, IDF, said the hijacking of the ship is a very serious incident on the global scale. Below are your comments. Amazing how Ukrainians are just popping up everywhere involving the Hamas-Israeli conflict despite their current forced conscription. Ukraine must explain, with evidence, how Hamas came into the possession of weapons originally given to Ukraine. Please wait a moment. This guy, Abraham Unger, sued the UOFSD claiming discrimination after he threatened another professor. The owner of the Galaxy Leader ship, Abraham Unger, is also a close friend of current Israeli Minister of Defense Yoav Gallant. Does the world really need Iran? I suspect this will turn into a big deal. It reeks of hogwash. Next news. Zelensky urges international community to send signal to Russia. Kyiv Independent. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky asked the international community to send a signal to Russia that the world will not tire of supporting Ukraine in a daily address on November 19. Below are your comments. We need this signal to Russia. No matter what they do, the world will not tire of defending freedom and international order. Does his guy not know yet we are getting tired of sending aid to Ukraine, and we include other countries, not only the US. Better get your negotiating points together, Becca. Translation: Send me more money so I can buy more Rolexes, Ferraris and mansions in Switzerland. We are all tired of supporting Ukraine. I am also tired of Z running around dressed like he just came back from the front line. I bet he hasn't been anywhere near there. Whatever you want to do, but without my money, beggars. Do not worry, Zelensky. Chuck Schumer has your back with billions of U.S. tax dollars. Next news. Mediazona confirms identities of over 37,000 Russian soldiers bleep in Ukraine. Kyiv Independent. Through open-source research, the Russian independent media outlet Mediazona, together with BBC Rus. IA, confirmed the names of 37,052 Russian soldiers who have been bleeped since the beginning of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. Below are your comments. Please, tell me this. Ukrainians keep saying the Russians have suffered over 300,000 in permanent losses of men. Yet, this group was able to come up with 37,000 dead? The loss of life is tragic, but the Ukrainian side is factually false by overreporting Russian losses by like factor of 8 according to my ma. So all the so-called pundits were correct, that the UKRAPI bleeps suffered a 20-to-1 casualty ratio to the Russians. Almost 40,000 dead Russians, about 800,000 dead UKRAPI bleeps. I can live with that. I gotta say. I love the sweet SMEII of charred UKRA pibleep in the morning. Next news. Yemen's Houthi rebels hijack an Israeli-linked ship in the Red Sea and take 25 crew members hostage. Associated Press. Yemen's Houthi rebels seized an Israeli-linked cargo ship in a crucial Red Sea shipping route Sunday and took its 25 crew members hostage, officials said, raising fears that regional tensions heighten over the Israel-Hamas war were playing out on a new maritime front. The Iran-backed Houthi rebels said they hijacked the ship over its connection to Israel and would continue to target ships in international waters that were linked to or owned by Israelis until the end of Israel's campaign again. Below are your comments. I thought that was why we had ships in that area, to deter and protect. Why is it we keep hearing from politicians that Social Security is going broke, but we never hear that welfare is going broke? These proxy terrorists have to go. What army takes hostages? Next news. Yemen's Houthi rebels hijack cargo ship in Red Sea. BBC. The Iran-backed rebels say the vessel is Israeli, a claim denied by Israel which blames Iran. Below are your comments. Mostly an act of piracy, but now the Houthis also have a navy. This was a cargo ship sailing from Turkey to India. Nobody mentions what the cargo was, or if it was sailing empty. The ship has an Israeli owner, but isn't registered there, and no Israelis were aboard. The problem is not those Houthi rebels, it is Iran. The rebels are paid by Iran, just like all. They gotta go also. They knew if they did it to a U.S. ship we would do nothing, but Israel will. Israel go get them. And respond way bigger or they will keep doing it. There needs to be a combined world response against Iran. They bring too much instability to the Middle East and the entire world. Next news. Zelensky imposes further sanctions against individuals and legal entities. Ukrainska Pravda. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has signed into law the decision of Ukraine's National Security and Defense Council (NSDC) on the application of an amendments to personal special economic and other restrictive measures. Sanctions. Adopted on 18 November 2023. Below are your comments. Lol. Sanctions by Zelensky on 120 individuals. What did they do? Stop giving him money? And what will he do to them? Stop asking them for more money as punishment. Or, no more comedy acts for you. Jokeboy, recipient of billions tax money dollar note, has got angry at certain individuals who aren't in his CRCLE. Hilarious. Z selfie makes me laugh. You gotta love a clown. He days are coming they go realize is only clown to West. Next news. Giant Panda takes stage alongside Biden in SNL cold open. The Hill. Saturday Night Live featured a talking giant panda participating in a press conference alongside a mock President Biden giving remarks after meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping in its cold open. Meeting was a total win. Sure, we made agreements about communications, fentanyl, climate change, but most importantly, got tea. He thing America really needs right. Below are your comments. Saturday Night Live is still on TV? Anyone who voted for Biden is a clown. Army scrambling to get back soldiers it kicked out over Biden's military vaccine mandate. One is a phony without a brain. Question is which one? Not far from reality. Next news. Liberian leader George Weah hailed for his sportsmanship after accepting defeat. BBC. Across the divide, there is relief that Liberia's leader and ex-football star conceded to his rival. Below are your comments. And then there's Trump. Bravo, Weah. I fervently wish that we in the collective West, in Europe, in Britain, in North America, in Australia, had men and women with the integrity that Liberians show to possess so that our elections were clean and above board, and dangerous rivalries such as Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Please wait a moment. Thank you, George Weah. He might have lost the election, but he has become the father of his country. Take a lesson, Trump. Next news. Russia's missile stockpile remains below pre-war levels despite increased production. The new voice of Ukraine. Russia has not been able to fully replenish its missile stockpiles ahead of the winter despite increasing production, said Andriy Yusov, a spokesman for Ukraine's main intelligence directorate. On November 17. Below are your comments. Well, I guess they would. I'd be surprised if it were otherwise. You have X stockpiled in time of peace. War comes, you use Y amount from stockpile plus restart or increase production. The important number is how many you can use and what rate it diminishes the stockpile. Next news. Rwanda flights, could next step harm Good Friday Agreement? BBC. The European Convention on Human Rights is tied to the 1998 agreement, as BBC News NE explains. Below are your comments. If you don't get rid of them, your economy, culture and safety will all fail. Fiddle players, all of them. This is why Tories should be thrown from power. Who cares? Head 'em up. Move 'em out. Please subscribe to my channel. And if you like it, please thumbs up.